Welcome back once again to Between the Studs, and I have once again Chris and Mark with me today, and we're talking about these lovely things I see before us. We're talking about the castle theme, or castles in general, and we have our castle expert here. Actually, Chris knows a lot about castle.
I think we're both
as
experts
well.
on this theme.
Castle is my favorite theme.
Of all.
Yeah.
Of all.
I'd have to say so, yeah.
What do you think attracts you to the castle theme? Why castle?
Well, when I get a pile of bricks, especially if they're all the same color, the first thing I do is build a castle. I just build a giant castle out of them. We had a whole bunch of yellow bricks one time at church, and I was like, oh man, we've got to build a structure out of these. You know, what do we build? I think we built the Solomon's Temple, and it was supposed to be gold.
Yeah.
So we built it, and guess what it looked just like?
A castle?
A castle. A giant yellow castle. Yeah.
What about the castle theme attracts you? You told me that you read a lot of fiction that has to do with medieval and Viking and stuff. What do you think attracts you to that era?
Well, I like historical fiction. And honestly, I don't know. I really am attracted to medieval fantasy. My older brothers growing up were into Dungeons and Dragons. So we were always... we had those kind of figures, and we went to England when I was young, and I went to college in England, and we always
that explains the accent.
Yeah. And a summer abroad, and we visited all the castles, and I'm absolutely fascinated by them.
So you, when as kids, you guys played with castles more than like army men. You were much more into the knights and things like that.
Some of the best castle toys were called Britons. I don't know if you remember
that sounds
them.
familiar.
They were made in England, Britons, and they were plastic knights, full color, on a metal stand.
I think I remember those.
Yeah, they were made in the 70s and the early 80s. And that's probably what we had the most of for castle stuff.
Yeah. Definitely. I assume they had lots of castles and play sets and stuff. So let me ask you this, and I'll ask you the same thing. Do you prefer straight historical or a little bit of fantasy? Throw me some dragons and elves in there.
Ooh, that's a good question, but I'm going to have to say a little fantasy.
All right.
Yeah. Game of Thrones is right up my alley. Just enough fantasy. It's very historical, kind of realistic, and then all of a sudden, every now and then, you get a little dragon or something. I mean, who doesn't like dragons?
One of my friends described Game of Thrones as, knock knock, who's there? Guess who? Magic. Especially in the beginning, that it was hardly hinted at, and then it got more and more as it went on, so...
It's a good, subtle way to do it.
Yes. Same question for you. You're obviously a huge castle fan.
Yes, both big castle fans. I would say, for me, it's... I really enjoy some fantasy elements. I love seeing dragons in scenes. I love seeing just stuff that really wouldn't actually happen. At the same time, I think the historical stuff is a little bit more meaningful to me, because when I see a fantasy fire-breathing fortress like the one sitting in front of me here, that's cool, but it's also like, it stems from your imagination. You can do whatever you want. When you build an actual historical castle, I've seen a few of them, and they're actually like real size, scale accurate. It's like, dude, that's impressive, because they're copying something that actually was there. People have fought and died over this building, and it looks just like it. So that means a little more to me. At the same time, I totally like the dragons and all the fantasy action. I love to see all that stuff. So, but yeah, a little more into history.
So we have a real historical castle with us, made out of Lego.
Doing?
Yeah, it's right here.
There you go.
The one castle we have,
Exactly.
or have a picture of.
Yep. We don't have the
It's
set with
based-
us.
It's definitely historical.
Yep.
And it's a castle.
Exactly.
Actually, isn't the Cinderella's castle in Orlando, is that not based on a real castle in Switzerland?
Actually, I think it is. Yeah.
It's inspired by it for sure. The kind of the late era, really fanciful castles. So.
Yes.
But that's probably the closest you can get to a Lego set that's based off of a real castle.
Exactly. Yeah. How about the historical side for you? You told me that you were actually into castles before you were into Legos. Even as a child, you loved medieval. Can you imagine why? Like, why do you think that genre, that era, that time period attracts you so much?
Right. So I was a very poor student growing up. I was bad at reading and writing. But as soon as I got a history textbook, I just started reading it for fun. I just loved it. I couldn't drop it. I loved reading about the Greeks, the Romans, and the Vikings and knights. And so anything with a sword and shield really just, I don't know why, it just absolutely fascinated me. Maybe it's just because I like weapons in general. Me and my brother, we would just go beat each other with sticks. So it really drew me in. And at the time, there weren't a ton of castle sets. I think in 2004, I would have been a kid. And so they started coming out with the Knight's Kingdom 2. And then after that, they came out with the 2007, I think it was just a castle theme, but it had skeletons and orcs and stuff. A little more fanciful than I would generally prefer, but it was castle. And so that it was right at the right time. I got into it and I really enjoyed it. And those really stuck with me as more fun than other sets. Even though I liked Pirates in Space and City, I built all those. They just didn't mean as much or were as engaging as the castle ones for me. So just because of my interest in history, really helped cement castle as the main theme.
Your heritage, you're mostly Viking anyway.
Yeah, so Viking and Dutch and a little bit of Finnish as well. So yeah.
So maybe you like castles a lot because your ancestors destroyed castles.
Exactly.
And you feel compelled to rebuild.
Exactly. I'm like,
Well, you do buy Lego sets and destroy them.
Exactly. I'm trying to make up for the fact that my ancestors pillaged all sorts of stuff.
He lays siege.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Do you guys, before we get into sets, this may be a complex question, do you guys have a favorite real-life castle that you know of?
Yes. So it's a castle called Ognunur Castle in Ireland. It's mostly just a tower with a small wall around it, but it's really got these weird little side towers off it that really stood out to me. So I ended up building it in Lego. It's kind of too small, but eventually I want to rebuild it as a real castle.
I think my favorite would be the one that the Cinderella Castle is based on, the Schmürgenurgen or whatever it's called.
The German. I don't even remember the name.
Maybe it is German, not
There's
Swiss.
Berg Eltz, but that's actually a real castle. There's another one that was made just for looks, and I think that's the one that it's based off.
Oh.
I can't remember the name
no
off the top of my
one
head.
actually lived in it?
No, there was like a German or Austrian prince that built it just to live in and have fun. He bankrupt his entire country to build it, but he had a great time.
It was his summer home.
Yeah, he had a great time building it. It's beautiful. So,
how about you? Do you know of any?
Remember the name?
I would have to say it's a Welsh castle. It begins with a C, and I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's got these like the kill slots when you go into
Carfanon?
Possibly.
I don't even know how I'm pronouncing it. I'm probably butchering it, but that's I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's got a really cool name. Yeah. It's a Welsh name. And then you go in, if you get past the first gate, they've got these kill slots that these windows, and you stab and shoot arrows at people through the window. Well,
murder holes.
That's what they are, murder holes. Yeah. And it's just the whole castle is set up that way for protection.
Devious.
And, whereas a lot of your castles are just decorative.
Yeah.
Like whatever castle the Disney castle was modeled after, it's just a decorative castle.
It was summer home. It wasn't fortified. Yeah.
Whereas these are more functional castles for protection. So.
Yeah, at one point I looked up Dracula's castle. I forgot what that is. And it's in a great location. It's on this huge plateau. And it's just a rectangle.
Yeah.
It's nothing fancy about it.
Yeah, well, the heights served the most of the defense purpose there. Yeah.
It was very small, too, I think. It was definitely for fortification.
Yeah.
So let's talk Lego history. And we have to, of course, to start with the original, the OG.
Make some room for this.
The yellow castle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
And the llamas that it came with.
The early attempt at a horse from Lego, yes.
So they had no molded animals at this point?
No, absolutely not. They just barely had begun making minifigures for people because brick-built people were kind of tricky to do. So this is like the tied as the first sets to have minifigures, and horses obviously were far away from production at that time.
That is amazing. So there we have the white version. That's how they built it, with the tile?
Yep, that's the ears of the horse there.
That is totally illegal.
Yep, well, apparently it wasn't back then, but it became illegal, and then it's now kind of back in style again, so, yeah.
That is cool.
Yep, and you just have the knight sitting right on top of that horse like it was completely normal.
Why yellow?
Yes, so I have an answer to this question. Lego was trying not to include lots of gray in their sets because they were worried that kids would build lots of tanks with them. And so that is literally the case. I thought maybe they were trying to make it look like sandstone or tan, like because they didn't have tan pieces back then either. But they were literally just trying to not include that many gray bricks so that kids couldn't build tanks because they're like, we don't want kids building tanks. This is shortly after the two world wars, and so they're like, just no, we just wanted fantasy fun. So they were trying to have that's why they're avoiding gray until a little bit later in the 80s. They just gave up and they said maybe the castles are cool enough that they won't try and build tanks out of them.
I'll build a yellow tank. I'll show you.
Yeah, exactly, right? You know, but that was one of the main reasons they decided to go with yellow for the castle. So.
Was this part of the original design to have these two 1x4s?
Yeah, to kind of lock it in.
So there's hinge pieces, front and back. I guess that's just for play.
Yep.
Get in there.
I think it's pretty much just so you can access it. At the same time, it does weaken the foundation significantly, so they ended up kind of limiting the amount of hinges they had later. So
yeah, this is just built on 5 base plates. Yellow was very contrasting colors, yellow and red, so it did look very beautiful.
It stands out for sure. They also used a lot of stickers on this build, which is unusual because they did really steered away from the stickers later once they got more familiar with minifigures. But in this stage, everything had a sticker. All the guys had a sticker on them. All the shields had stickers on them. Even parts of the wall had stickers on them, which made it hard to take apart.
These tunic pieces weren't in print that long, right?
No, I think they only used them in that one, and then shortly thereafter, you can see they're already going with printed torsos in the next wave of sets. You can actually see it. We'll bring it out in a second.
What era is this? What year did this
would have been released in 78 or 79 and sold for a few years after that. So
okay. The classic yellow castle. How hard is this to build on your own and just buy a bunch of yellow pieces?
Most of it's pretty easy, but there are a few pieces which are extremely hard to find. Mostly this yellow corner slope. I think it only came in this set, and I don't think it was released afterwards. You got some little tiny 1x1 windows here and some red doors. Those are pretty much the only pieces that weren't made in large numbers later. And so those pieces are pretty desirable. Also all the stickers. If you don't have the stickers, you're just not going to be able to
It's just not going to happen.
Unless you print your own, which is probably the best option at this point. So.
Working drawbridge. So I assume at the time this exploded. Like this once they said, okay, we're going to do these themes, these historical themes, that it was a huge success. Am I right?
It was pretty successful, yeah, because they started making more quickly and they started improving on their designs quickly thereafter. Just a few years later, they started making stuff like the Guarded Inn and Black Falcon's Fortress, which are still really popular.
Where did it go from here? So the castle was in print, you said, a couple of years. What was the next?
Next one would have been, they had this joust scene, and they started adding some flags, some better shields, torso printing. How nice is that?
They still have the buildable horses.
Yeah, still have buildable horses, and the horses had buildable little like padding, barding armor for them. So they were starting to get improved. They have, I think they have even some. They're using more colors. They're using. It's just slightly more improved than the original castle.
And was this one of the first sets with that big old cypress tree?
Yes, one of the few sets with that cypress tree. They had it in another couple town sets, and then they had in the 2000s, they actually had a pack of 4 you could buy. And I actually was lucky enough to get one of those. But so that tree is very hard to find. That's one of the few sets that it came in originally before that secondary pack in the 2000s.
I actually really like this very plain shield design.
Yeah.
There. It reminds me, I don't know why, but of the Disney King Arthur.
Yeah, exactly.
The Sword in the Stone. It seems like that was everywhere in that movie, and it was a very simple design, the golds and reds and the dark red and red. Is that the same shape? Or was that an older design? Is that like the same as the new ones?
So there are some newer designs which are very similar, but they have a little lion or dragon on top of that to add a little symbol. And so what's interesting is the reason they would actually quarter a shield like that in medieval times is because they had gotten married, or there was several families that were associated with the title, and they would have different emblems on the shield. And so they don't have the little emblems on there, probably because it was too small to print. But
each one would have.
In the later series, they just stuck a big old emblem on top of 4 pieces, and they didn't really understand heraldry at all. But you get the idea. It was designed to kind of show that there's several families represented in this one unit.
I always wondered that heraldry thing where you can look up your family last name, and there's some kind of crest somewhere, or maybe even multiple versions.
Yeah.
But not everyone had crests, right? Like,
No.
only rich people had crests at all.
Yeah.
So are a lot of those made up for tourists?
Some of them probably are, but at the same time, I think if you go through the proper channels, you can actually have a crest made nowadays too. So it's like, it just depends on if you can trace your ancestry back to the right area, you have the right name, you can be associated with that. So I don't know all the specifics, but I'm sure with a little research, you can find a lot of interesting stuff about it.
I was always suspicious. Like, my last name, like, I don't think we were Royals.
Any name, any last name at a Renaissance festival, you can get your crest. Doesn't matter what your last name
That's pretty
is.
cool.
Even at Epcot,
Yeah.
they have this huge book, and you just look up your last name, and there's a quest for
Exactly.
everything. So I was like, suspect. All right. So from here, let's go on to the next one. So you said the first factions we had.
So I would say we go with Foresters or Falcons or
Okay.
Lions. Or
So this is from...
that would be the mid to late 80s there. And so that's, roughly 7-8 years after the first castle sets, a couple years after. Still within recent memory for most kids and teens back then. So.
And this is, you said the first few castle sets that had factions. It was not explained, there was no good guy or bad
No,
guy. It's
absolutely
just, these guys had this shield and these guys had this shield. It was up to you to decide what the story was.
Exactly.
And Black Falcons was one of them. You said the Dragon Knights.
They were the next wave after
were
the
the
Black
next
Falcons,
one.
but they actually were contemporaries because you have Black Falcon guys in Dragon Knights sets.
Oh, okay.
So they were still dragging the Falcon Knights further along in years after their original sets came out.
Who else started with
The
them?
Lion Knights,
Lion.
the Forestmen who have the little stag shield.
Crusaders?
Or Crusaders. There's kind of synonymous. So you had I call them the Lion Knights because they have a lion on the shield,
Okay.
but they were also called the Crusaders. I think in the
The
sets,
guys with the axes.
and they were also technically under the Crusader thing. It's a little confusing. So you have different groups, but so.
Were they actually Crusaders with the white and the red cross?
No,
okay, I didn't think so.
They avoided all those probably for a good reason.
Yeah,
violence,
to avoid problems. But they stuck with mostly animal heraldry.
You said in the Lego community, the Black Falcons are one of the favorites.
Yeah, they're revered basically.
Why is that? Why? Just because the symbol looks cool? Did they have more sets than the others?
I think it's because they did have a prominent place in that era in the 80s. And they also were just a little bit like they have the black armor. They have the black stuff. So they're a little cooler. They were back in black, they're the Black Falcons.
Black and blue is a little cooler than red.
Exactly. The red
And
guys
yellow.
seem kind of like the goody goodies, maybe the pansies, and so these guys seem not necessarily. They weren't the bad guys, but they could have been the bad guys. They
Yeah.
seem a little cooler. They seem a little more confident. So that, in my opinion, that's what suggests it. But I don't know.
Well, that's an old stereotype: the White Knight and the Black Knight.
Yeah.
and the Black Knight's the bad guy.
Everyone wants to be Darth Vader. They don't want to be, I think it kind of goes into that vibe for sure.
And we have a built version of the new Black Falcons friendly
Oh, yes.
Blacksmith Workshop. We will get
Exactly.
to that. But let's continue our trip through history. We have a plethora of built and boxed sets. Forest Man, another one of the original factions. And these guys, of course, it's inescapable to not compare them with Robin Hood.
Oh yeah, they were designed to look like Robin Hood characters and stories for sure.
And what I liked about this faction so much is that they had castles, but they really lived in trees.
Yeah, exactly.
Black trees.
Yeah, black big oak trees. Yes.
And again, no story. It was up to you. But definitely, I mean, it's inescapable to think of these as the guys robbing the
rich,
perhaps the Black Falcons.
Yeah, probably the Black Falcons and Lions were susceptible prey to these guys for sure. So.
And giving it to the poor peasants. Now, they did not make too many peasant sets, right?
Nope, barely any. You have a handful of peasant characters until more into the later 2000s. You have some actual like a medieval market village and the mill village raid, and lately the blacksmith shop actually has a few peasants as well. So. It's more recent. They started including more civilian stuff. It was mostly the soldiers and the foresters going on back then. There's another great forester set there.
And that actually has unstuck sprues on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
A couple of them are unstuck in there. Pretty awesome.
Now, what
Pretty
makes
rare.
it makes it hard for us to inventory these sets because each sprue came with all three different plumes. But the picture and the inventory might say you just use this plume and this plume and this plume. But if you want to have the correct inventory, what the set came with, you got to include all those extra plumes.
Dozens of extra feathers.
So it makes it hard for us to inventory those.
I know we include it when we can, but if we can only get this one piece and the other two on the sprue weren't included in the set at all, are we going to order it on Bricklink and pay the extra money?
If they were not used in the set, then we're not obliged to provide it.
Okay.
However, this one here does have all of the extra plumes. So if it's there and it's original and it came with it, and we're going to put any extra piece in there that we can.
But it's still certified complete without them because they weren't included.
They weren't used in the set.
If every guy has a feather that's supposed to be in the instructions, that's complete. Yeah.
Interesting.
And then sometimes if we don't have all the plumes, we'll put them out built like this. Like this guy, we probably don't have the extra plumes for, but they all have a plume. So, sometimes that's the situation.
Yeah.
That was my favorite Forester set. It has the cool opening feature. Not too much opening, just enough you could see inside.
Do you remember the name of that one?
Forestman's Hideout, Forestman's Tower, something like that.
They have generic names.
It's very simple. Yeah, it's Forestman's something. So I'd have to look it up.
Do we have any Lion Knights here? Original Lion Knights?
Not necessarily. I know we have the crossed axes guy there in the blacksmith shop. You can see there's one guy there guarding the blacksmith shop there.
Was he an original or added later? That faction?
That was in the same time frame as the Black Falcons and Lion Knights. He was technically an ally of the Lion Knights if you are getting into the lore of it. But you could probably have him be a neutral party, or he could be friends with everybody.
He's a mercenary. Yeah, he's a hired gun.
The axe guys were they could be fit in wherever you needed them to be. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And this is the first blacksmith?
Yeah, I think that's the first blacksmith of anything. Had some very exclusive pieces for a while till they remade a few of them, like the pitchfork, the black hood, and the brown cape piece. They're pretty unique to that set. That's very cool.
That's the cape they use in some pieces, but backwards.
Yeah, it was the best that LEGO could do for a cape before they started making actual fabric ones.
Nice.
In the early 90s, I think. So.
Did you have a favorite castle set?
Favorite castle set? Probably this one right here.
There you go.
It's got the yellow window panel with the black that just gave it a real realistic look.
That Tudor woodwork.
Yeah, and then the printed castle panels.
That's one of the all-time favorite Black Falcons classic castle sets for sure.
And this isn't a huge set either. I mean, it's bigger compared to the others, but
it's smaller than the Yellow Castle. But it does have a lot of soldiers for its size. I mean, I think there's 5 characters, 2 horses. For a small castle, that's a pretty good squad of troops defending it. So.
Yeah.
And I guess just for its size also, I liked the Knights Kingdom 3 Vladek's Fortress. It was huge.
Yeah.
And King Leo's Fortress was huge.
Yeah.
And then we move into the era of
90s and I think they're next. They're just the next step right after the Falcons was...
So these overlapped?
Just a little bit.
Okay.
You had a few Falcon Knights put into some of the Dragon Knights and Black Knights sets as antagonists. Perhaps they suggested it. I think the best example of it is the boat set. It has a few Black Falcons on the shore.
Oh yeah.
So I don't think we have that set with us right now, but it's
Dragon Boat.
Oh no! Here's a set where it'll prove the contemporary. I think that's the Fire Breathing Fortress. There is a great dragon piece, which is very new back then. But you see, there's some Falcons attacking a dragon castle here.
So they're laying siege.
They're shown trying to get rid of these pesky dragon knights who have showed up all of a sudden. And so that shows that, and you can look on the date on that set. That's probably late 80s, early 90s.
So it sounds to me like the Dragon
1990.
Knights. Dragon Knights were victorious because they pushed out the Black Falcons.
They lasted longer than the Black Falcons, so they probably won the war.
They invaded the LEGO universe and pushed out the Black Falcons.
Well, I mean, they had actual molded dragons here, so these guys were a big deal back in the day.
So it's like they were the Targaryens.
Yeah, basically.
From Game of Thrones.
So Game of Thrones stole the LEGO castle lore. You heard it here first, folks.
That's right. Now, I'm noticing a lot of black in the use of the structures. Like the Forestmen had gray, but then they had the black trees, and then this castle is black.
Mostly black.
This castle is black. So Was that a dragon? Were they the first to introduce black stone in their
I think so.
construction?
The first to use it prominently, for sure. They started changing up the color scheme again to get a little bit more contrast and variety. Because they're still using gray, but they're using a lot more black wall panels. And so I think it gives it more of a menacing vibe that the kids were probably liking at the time. If the Black Falcons were popular, then maybe the Black Castles of the Black Knights and Dragon Knights would be even more popular, in theory.
Would you say that's because they were hinting heavily that they were the bad guys?
A little bit, or at least had a kind of a menacing attitude.
And I like this set here, this Horseman set has a brown tree.
Yep.
And most of the sets, as you said, had black trees.
Yes, before this for sure, because they didn't really have a lot of brown pieces, maybe accessories, but most of the time they didn't have brown panels or bricks to use. So that's a big step up in that regard, for sure.
Do you guys have a favorite faction?
If I could speak for Mark, I don't know, Black Falcons or Forestmans. From the outside looking in, what I see him build.
Yeah.
I love this base plate.
What would you say, Mark?
The road plate.
My favorite faction is probably the later 2011, 2012 Kingdom sets. We have a couple of them stacked over there. So that's my favorite one to build with, just because I like the shiny silver and gold armor.
Oh, yeah.
However, as far as nostalgia goes, probably the Foresters, but the Black Falcons are close too. Although I like all of them, but those are probably the coolest for me.
If I were to build an army right now, it would be Black Falcons.
They're definitely the most popular right now because of the later set, which we'll talk about in a second. So.
I think I would like the Forcemen as well, because their structures are with nature. They live in trees. They're like Errol Flynn, like Robin Hood. Like I imagine, like very neat mustaches.
Yeah.
Now, was this part of the Dark Forest line?
Yes, and that was a little bit after the Dragon Knights.
It says Dark Forest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of the Forestmen.
So that was the next wave of Forestmen.
And you have the new Lion Knights.
Yes.
Is that King Leo's?
Those are called the Royal Knights on the
Royal
but they're like the precursor to King Leo. They're like the in between the Lion Knights of the Black Falcons and the Lion Knights of King Leo and Kingdoms and other stuff from later.
You hinted at the story, and although Lego didn't lay anything out specifically, they did have strong suggestions.
Yeah, hints.
What is the fan kind of story that people have put together?
The thing is, it's different from every person you talk to. But
Okay.
some of the synopsis of it would be that you started out with the original Kingdoms. It was kind of diverse with all the different shields from the Yellow Castle, the Joust set, those early stickered and printed sets. And then you get to, like, somehow the kingdom becomes two main protagonists. You have the Lions and Black Falcons, and the Forestmen causing trouble in between. And then from there you have, it's theorized that the Dragon Knights and Black Knights invaded and took over the kingdom, because you see a lot of ships, you see the Black Falcons trying to besiege fortresses of theirs, so it's like they were introduced into the castle realm and kind of took over after that. And so then at that point, you just see various iterations of the teams until you get to the more modern, only two factions again. So it's kind of like the evolving kingdoms replaced by other kingdoms and taking over. So, but that's one theory I've heard online. It was like 10 years ago I read that. But it's kind of like inferred, and you could do whatever you want from that point. But yeah.
And I just noticed that's interesting because it goes with your theory. The original crown motif was never used again.
It was used later in 2007 and 2008 with the blue and gold crown knights. And so those guys were, the thing about them was they were the only definitely good faction. They were fighting skeletons, orcs, and they had some dwarven allies, but they were the same color scheme. So it's like they were alone in that point in the Lego castle history. They were the only good kingdom. So.
And I've heard them called crownies.
Crownies. That's their popularized term for sure. So.
Crownies.
We did skip over this one.
We need to cover this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So this, I did do a video, bing, watch it, on the Black Knights Castle.
That's it says on the box there, Dungeon Master's Castle, which we know Dungeon Masters is from Dungeons and Dragons. Right?
Yep.
Of course. I didn't believe that was the Canadian name for it. I believe in America it was called
the Black Knights.
Well, on the top it says Dungeon Master's Castle, even though it says Black Knights on the front sticker. So I think it's kind of the same term, but yeah, they're covering the same team here. So yeah.
So this one is certified complete in box, and this was the faction that came in toward the end of the 90s, you said?
Yeah, that should be 1990 something on the bottom
92.
box. Yeah, 92. So yeah, that would have been the Invaders replacing the Black Falcons and Lion Knights, and possibly the Forgers as well.
And they were a new faction, because they had the two-legged dragon, which you pronounce... Wyvern. And the mostly black motif in the design.
Yep.
And this, at the time, was considered, at least that's what I read, that it was the biggest, baddest, and best castle at the time.
It's still regarded as like the peak of that classic castle style and era and design.
It is.
Because it includes the most pieces, has the most guys, has the most armor and plumes, has a ghost, has wolf pack guys sneaking in. It's really a great set.
And a plume fact, you were talking about the sprues. This set has the white dragon plume that was new for the Black Knights to have these little dragon crests on the top.
Yep.
That white one only came in this set.
Yep.
It was never remade, and we got an entire sprue for this set. So
Brand new,
unused.
unpeeled. Wow.
Unused
Do you remember how much that
sprue.
was?
$40?
$40.
$40.
Wow.
For the plume.
There it is, right there.
Actually, is it on the top there? We can see it.
Proudly displayed.
it
So
That's what we paid for it.
yeah,
$40.
we had to pay to. Whoa, that's coming out. Yeah, gotta fix that.
Plastic is undoing it.
We had to pay $40 to complete this set.
Wow.
Everything else is not that hard to come by,
Yeah,
right?
the panels aren't too rare. You can find a few of the horse armors elsewhere, I think.
The flag's probably pretty unique.
That big flag is rare. And those yellow panels are from the Black Falcon's Fortress a while ago. And you can find them there as well. But there's some of the panels are a little hard to find. So.
We have a sizable, and that was a pretty common base plate too.
Yeah.
We have a sizable graveyard, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But we did not have that white sprue. So the Black Knights invade. The poor crownies, they lost.
Exactly.
Their kingdoms are laid asunder in burning ash. And what happens next?
So then you had the rise of the Lion Knights again with King Leo and Knights Kingdom 1. I don't think we have too many sets from that particular era on hand. We can look around really quick while we're talking about it. But they were fighting the Bull Knights, who were completely new at the time. They were also shown as sort of an invading team. And so they had, the Bull Knights had all the siege weapons, siege towers, catapults, and the Lion Knights, King Leo, his characters, and first named characters. There's one of the example. There's a Bull Knight siege weapon. And Knight's Kingdom.
Ooh, look at that scowl.
They were very characterized. They had great prints. And they all had names too. All the a lot of the leaders had names. And so that was pretty interesting. So before they were all very anonymous, generic smiley faces, and now they're starting to get more characterized.
We got the really cool chrome weapons and armor in these sets too, right? Oh, you've got another one on your right over there, right?
Here we go, yeah. So there's an example of the chrome weapon incorporation.
That's a bad looking dude. He's got an eye patch.
turn him
Look at
back
all the
here.
chrome.
Each set, you got a different chrome weapon, helmet, sword, shield, and armor. And if you bought all 4 or 5 sets, then you could have an entire chrome figure.
A super armored up
Yep.
ultimate warrior. That is cool. I didn't realize I've never seen those.
Yeah.
Just sifting through I've seen plenty of the swords,
The swords are more common.
but I've never seen the shields. Were the Bull Knights the only ones they did in that style?
They did a few golden chrome weapons in a adventurer's set, but they didn't have any specific motif or emblem on the shield. So that's pretty much the only chrome emblemed shield you can get is the bulls. So the bulls were lucky in that regard. So
And they were naming a lot of these guys too, right? Like
Yeah.
That's Cedric.
yeah, exactly. Cedric, I think he was one of the main bad guys. And each one of the characters, all King Leo's troops all had names. He had his daughter, Gale Storm, was a knight. That was pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So
Was she the first female knight?
I'm pretty sure the first Lego female knight, yes. So
She had a unique printing too.
yeah, she had like a
she's
female
very cool.
armored torso. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That was a pretty unique. Many bold steps were taken at that point. And then shortly thereafter, they came out with Knight's Kingdom 2. I just got a few of these sets when I was a little kid. And then I got heavily into Knight's Kingdom 2 right after that. And that was the next wave of Lego Castle.
Do you see any of those sets?
There's that joust right there, and I got this built guy. This is actually from the second or third wave of Knight's Kingdom, but they also had big action figures too.
So yeah, explain that to me. What So Lego went with a different direction with these lighter blues and more gimmicky.
A little bit, yes, for sure. They're often referred to as the Jelly Bean Knights by people who don't like them. Because there was red ones, there were green ones, there were blue ones, there were black ones.
So we have 2 of this particular set. Here it is built, and here it is in the package. Explain what is this?
So this is they were trying to get a little bit more of play features going on. So it used to be when you hit this, it would fly out. I don't know if it's actually still set up right. It might be snapped in there. But you could smack that and it would go rolling out and they would just crash into each other. That was pretty typical of the 90s and 2000s Lego design. So you could shoot these guys at each other. It was pretty fun. All the catapults were working. I mean, they've had working catapults since the Black Knights and Dragon Knight sets, but they were trying to do that even more so. They were looking for action.
And they added new helmets, new styles of shield, new factions with this, what is that?
Yep,
Eagle?
all different teams. That was like the hawk or eagle, and then you had a monkey symbol, you had a bear symbol, you had a scorpion symbol, you had a wolf symbol. So some nice new designs. However, they're pretty stylized. So unless you're going for a more fantasy look, they might not make so much sense in a historical context, especially with like blue and purple armor is kind of unusual.
Did they keep dragons and forestmen at this time, or did they totally forego?
They got wiped out. They were just unheard of after King Leo and the Bulls' time. They kind of just faded out of existence for a while. And then, so this wave was actually, despite older fans disliking it, was very popular. They had 3 different waves of this particular line. In the story, they had comic books, they had some video games, board games,
website, online comics.
Did they have named characters as well?
All of them had names.
This is Vladek here. That's one of the reasons why I like these so much.
Great villain.
Vladek and his Scorpion Knights. And he just looks really evil. He's got a really unique...
it's like a Darth Vader of Castle time, yeah.
And you don't see scorpions on crests very much.
No, yeah, it's very unusual.
I really like that. And it's red and black. Perfect, evil colors.
Exactly.
Explain these to me.
Right, so that was part of that multimedia thing Chris was talking about. You've got these big action figures with very unique pieces, very specific pieces. And they were a lot of fun. You could knock each other's shields off, you could hit each other's armor off. So they were a great play feature. They were pretty popular when I was a kid. But they don't necessarily hold up as well as the traditional Lego set does.
Yeah, they're certainly not valuable.
No, they're not. They haven't caught on again yet.
I believe it's probably a takeoff of Bionicle because Bionicle was popular.
Yeah, it really
Bionicle was before these guys.
Yeah, it was a couple years before they had done Bionicle, and it was very popular for decades. And so this was kind of like, maybe we can kind of tap into that Bionicle market. Wasn't quite as successful.
And these parts are very... Or no, that's not true. I was going to say some of these parts are very specific, but no, it's
some of them they
armor
do.
Piece could be used. That's a regular Technic connection. The body is very specific.
I've never seen the bodies anywhere else, but a lot of the arms and armor pieces were used in other sets. So
we've got a little face. Now, were these supposed to be these characters just upside?
They were just a big version of the characters you could use to smack each other with. So it was pretty fun. Cool. And they had like a dozen of these guys, different ones you could get, different shields. I think this is one of the later versions of that larger knight figure.
As far as the storyline goes, I think this is Sir Mathis, who later becomes King Mathis, and he becomes the king.
Okay.
There's comics and books, and it was actually really good.
It was
very
engaging.
entertaining.
Yeah, back
Did
in the
they
time.
make a King Mathis set?
Yeah, in the second wave, this is the first wave.
Actually, I think he has his own castle.
Yeah.
And it's pretty big.
Was it pastel blue?
Oh yeah, they had these really weird colors for the blue and purple and green.
And what color blue is that?
It's like a purplish blue. I don't even know the color in Bricklink, but it's a unique, and they didn't make it afterwards either. That was pretty much a one-off color at the time. So.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's a very rare color.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it only came in these sets for sure.
Wow. I had no idea. I'm getting learned up today, guys. Thank you.
Lord Vladek is a ancestor of, who is it? Ogle,
yes.
from
That's
Alpha,
right.
Alpha Team.
Yeah, and Alpha Team came out shortly before this, so he was kind of a prequel, as it were. So, but
I also like this theme because we got these really cool swords.
And the pole arm there, the multi-bladed, I would call it a glaive. And so that is when that first came out, it was pretty cool.
Those swords were introduced for this line?
Exactly. Or might have been Vikings, similar time frame. The Viking sets also had those swords. And they might have just I'm not sure which one came first.
They certainly, I mean, I know you said this line they were going for a less historical, but these look very future laser swords.
A little bit. The red, and they had yellow, and they had like a bronze and copper. They had a blue one. So it was some wild colors for swords for sure.
All right, the box says that this is Sir Jaco and that's King Mathis. Just to correct myself.
Okay. But I think if it was Jaco, he ended up being a king later. Like that one, the character was popular and they made him a king later.
Kingdoms, that was Kingdoms 2, you said?
That was Kingdoms. Nice Kingdom 2, because King Leo would have been Kingdoms 1. So.
Okay. Now, why did they change over from Castle and then Kingdoms? Was it just to differentiate?
Probably. They just call it the Castle theme, and then they wanted to make it a little bit more specific, I guess. They did Knight's Kingdom, they did Knight's Kingdom. They didn't even put it 2 then. I think it was actually the second version of Knight's Kingdom.
Oh, okay.
And so we call it Knight's Kingdom 2 because it's the second one.
Okay.
But then after that, they just called it Castle with the 2007, these skeleton guys right here.
Okay, and this is the first time, well, not the first time because they had dragons, but this is the first time they had a definite bad guy that was a fantasy.
Well, the Bulls Knights were sort of looked a little worse, and then the Bladdock Knights looked really bad, and these guys got full-on skeleton undead army. So this is like absolutely clear.
Much worse than
these
guys.
It gets absolutely clear that these guys were fighting the bad guys now. So because there was only one good team of knights at this time.
Okay, so all the other factions disappeared. It was the Crownies versus.
This is the Castle Apocalypse happening here.
This is 2007.
Yep.
And this guy includes that special golden. Is he the king?
No, it wasn't. The king is a different character. I don't think we have a set with him in it right now, but they had a king for that. He didn't have a name, though. They kind of got away from the names after the Knight's Kingdom 2 with the Jaco and Matthias and all that. They don't really have specific names anymore. They were trying to be a little more classic style with that.
And they introduced the skeleton horses?
Skeleton horses, skeletons that could hold their arms up and not just kind of rattle around. So they were getting quite a bit of new stuff. But they're using a lot of weapons, like see that pole arm the knight has on the back, you can see. That's from the wave before, that glaive pointed pole arm thing he's fighting with. So I think the only new sword they had was the kind of curved sword for the skeletons, like a scythe blade.
How about this Morningstar?
Morningstar is new as well. That was a little flexible one. They also had the round shield, was kind of new at the time.
I noticed they call it Castle again.
It's just Castle. They've dropped the Kingdom's name, and because I think people were starting to get tired of Kingdoms after like 3 waves of Knight's Kingdom 2, and this came out a few years after that. Not too big a break, a couple years. And this is also a little, they're using the classic style swords for some of the footmen. Mm-hmm. So they're getting in these helmets, like that visored helmet is more classic style as well. So they're kind of taking a step back, a little less fanciful for the good guys, but very fanciful for the bad guys. So they're still getting that fantasy element, but they're getting a little more conservative, a little more sedate with the good guys. So,
was there a definite story to this at all? You said there weren't any named characters, but did it explain where the skeletons came from? Why was this one a black skeleton?
Yeah. So from what I gathered from the comic books and the video games, the games on Lego.com and stuff like that, there was the evil wizard who was in charge of the skeletons, and he had captured the princess, and so the knights of the king were trying to rescue the princess. But there's a big dragon attacking the king's castle too, so the wizard was just trying to take over everything. And he had the princess captured as leverage and stuff. So it was like the knights were in a rough situation. They were constantly trying to...
he resurrected this army.
Yeah, it seems like. And I would say the black skeletons are like the even more powerful, evil version of the normal skeletons. I'm not sure if that's the case, but it just seems like they were the even badder bad guys, you know. So.
This one here reminds me a lot of Sir Lancelot and Queen Guinevere. Mm-hmm. You've got a queen up in the castle tower, and then you've got the good knight, you know, saving her from the skeletons attacking.
Very classic scenario.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very classic.
Which happened all the time.
Yeah.
Back, in the medieval days.
They were fighting those skeletons all the time.
Yeah. Those princes, they would end up in towers.
Yeah.
So what happened after this? You said there was about a 2-year break from Kingdoms with no new castle, and then they brought it back just as castle with this huge fantasy element.
So they came out with the typical 7 sets, one's $100, the rest of them are smaller, and then they actually ended up doing several waves of just these guys, the Crown Knights, fighting various enemies. You had the orcs, the trolls guys, they were fighting the giant trolls, they were really fun.
Which so they named. And one of them had a name in Clutch Powers, because Clutch Powers came out around the same time.
Yeah, this area.
And his name was Hogrid.
Hogrid.
Hogrid? Hogrid?
Hogrid. Ogre?
Hogar?
Hogar.
Maybe like Ogre.
Hogu?
Hogar, I think.
Maybe
Yeah.
one of those names. And
He
so
was the tan one.
So that's pretty fun. So they're drawing elements from the castle line into other Lego media at the time too. So
And unfortunately, we don't have any completed sets. We do sell plenty of those ogres, though.
yeah, we have lots of the big trolls.
We have
Yeah.
lots of big trolls,
ones.
I mean. And then, what was the one? It was a female looking.
Oh yeah, the queen troll orc lady witch.
She
Doctor.
was like a witch doctor, and then they had the king.
The troll king. Yeah,
There
he had
was
a
a-
crown. It was really
They,
cool.
they had really unique parts. They had tattered brown capes and a brown crown,
Yeah,
and then
big swords and
one of the king's eyes was like
scarred. Yeah.
scarred.
Ooh,
They were
fantastic.
very. Everything about them was pretty unique.
Menacing. Yeah, they're cool.
So those poor crownades, they had to fight skeletons, they had to fight trolls. What was next for them?
So eventually, because they were popular, they had a couple waves of them. The first wave was great. Second wave, they got into the orcs and trolls. The third, they were finalizing them, putting out one or two sets to go with the collections they've released. It was the Medieval Market Village, the first medieval peasants in large numbers. Really great set. Really hard to find now. And so that one was interesting because it's almost purely civilian. There's no bad guys, no fighting going on. So that was a different step for LEGO because I think they were seeing that these really epic, climactic, apocalyptic situations that sometimes they just wanted to have a peaceful village scene too. So that was probably the first step in that direction, besides like the blacksmith shop or some of the
And
older
it seemed
classics.
really popular.
Yeah.
You got those two medieval style buildings, right?
Yeah, exactly. The
That was-
blue one and the
And
tan
some
one.
farm animals too.
Yep,
right?
so
That was
cows,
the first old set I bought from you.
Okay.
As a customer years ago, that was the first big old set I bought. Because I do like medieval
It was a
stuff.
great
but
set.
That had
it
the
had-
medium blue.
Yep, medium
Yes.
blue,
Yeah.
hard
Yeah.
to find color.
Yeah, it has the inn. It has another blacksmith workshop.
Yep.
At the bottom, but then it has the inn and
Like a house on the
the
top,
house on the top, and it was awesome. Plus those super rare, never ever again reprinted rare goats. It had two of them.
I think the goats came in the Mill Village raid a little bit after.
Oh,
a
it
couple years
did?
later.
Okay.
That had cows in it though, the brown cows, which
Very
are also hard to
similar
find.
set, the
Yeah.
Mill Village Raid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We'll go over that in just a second when we get to Kingdoms. But yeah, it's one of those rare civilian sets, and it's super popular for that reason. I actually was lucky and got two when it first came out. So me and my brother both got one. So we got to play with them.
And was that a birthday present?
We
or
actually bought them.
Christmas? Oh, really?
Yeah, we had
Okay.
to save up and buy them. So.
Are they still together?
No, they're just. But they were fun at the time. So.
I guarantee you he has the goat still.
But then right after that, it was another short break, and then they introduced the Kingdoms line just after, and that's actually my favorite one, just because I got a lot of them. I really like the red and white knights. I think they look really, really cool. They're very good guy-y, but there's not quite as clear evil as these guys. I think we have some more examples here.
So Kingdoms returns,
Yes, the
And-
term Kingdoms, but not Knight's Kingdom, just Kingdoms.
just Kingdoms. So this was the first time it was branded just Kingdoms.
Yeah, they're actually making it shorter and shorter each time. So Castle, Kingdoms.
And you had only two factions again.
Yep.
You're simplifying it. You have these new dragons,
Yep.
and then you have these new lions.
Interestingly, the bad guys aren't as nearly as bad as the skeletons or trolls or orcs were, because they're just normal people and they live in sort of a villainous looking castle, but it's more along the lines of the dragon knights and black knights of the bad classic stuff.
And these chess sets were killer, absolutely killer army builder packs.
Oh yeah,
They got to be the best army builder packs they got, and they were pretty cheap. They were like $50.
exactly. You could get a big army for $100. It was great.
Yeah.
Well, I just like that the specific plastic molded base for it.
Yeah.
And not that you could use that for much building, but as a display.
Oh, it's
That would
great.
be an awesome display if you wanted to reuse it, not as a chessboard. But yeah, we have a completed version of this. We have a Viking chess set as well.
With the Viking chest.
That was very similar, just a little earlier than this.
But it did not have the specific molded bottom like this. In fact, this was the only chess set they ever produced that had the specific molded bottom, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and they also had a Knight's Kingdom chess set, I think. Yeah.
Yes, they did that one.
Yeah.
They also did a chess set for the Crowny Knights, and that one is a really rare set because it's gigantic. It's actually like twice as large
That's
as that
right.
one. And it's
That's
like,
right.
if you have seen that set, you're a lucky person. It's just super rare.
Yeah.
They didn't sell too many of those because it was really expensive. But that's the side note on that, rabbit trail on that one. But
Then you got a pretty good poly bag from that set, the Archer.
yep, battle packs. That's when they started introducing these little 5-character battle packs.
Those battle packs were rare because you could only get them at the Lego stores, right? and they are so expensive now.
Yeah, well, these characters in general are very pricey because people wanted to build big armies of them and still do.
Yeah.
And so they're very expensive.
That's crazy because this one's $70. They're both $70, and none of these are exclusive figures, right?
No, they're pretty normal. They're just
It's the
hard
fact
to
that
find.
it's closed, sealed.
Yeah, it's just a collector's item.
Yeah.
That is
Very collectible.
crazy. So if you're a classic castle guy, you have to have these hanging on your
Yeah,
wall.
exactly.
You have to.
These are the only sets that these specific guys with capes came in.
Oh, really?
But they may have been in another set without a cape.
You could get capes and put them
Yeah.
on them too. It wasn't
Yeah.
too hard to do that.
Oh, okay, but that combination only came.
Yeah.
That's true.
Oh, okay.
So these guys were pretty popular. They lasted for a couple different waves. They had a joust set. They had a mill village raid, which was like the market village. There's a few more examples. There's another blacksmith shop.
Yeah.
That was actually featured in the instructions for the new blacksmith shop. We'll show that
Really?
in a second. Yeah.
Okay. So this will be more popular probably.
Probably.
And you also get these had the goats. They had
Chickens.
The chickens. This one has a dark tan chicken in it.
It's great. So these were I loved these as a kid, or as a teenager, I think at this point, and I bought a bunch of them, so I still have quite a couple
The
of these guys.
armor
at home.
was the pearl light gray and pearl dark gray, which made it a look and metallic looking.
Yeah, very
which
nice.
was really cool.
This little armor set that they have here, was that the first time they introduced this?
Yeah, so
That-
an equivalent nowadays would be the Ninjago weapons packs that they included most Ninjago sets. They have those little swords and knives and stuff. It's kind of a precursor to that. So
They were smaller.
they came in one little bag,
And
like
yeah,
the Ninjago ones.
and they were similar to other stuff like that knife, but not quite the same.
Exactly, similar but not same. And those were actually using the Heroica board game.
yeah, which
as well.
probably were about the same time period.
Yeah,
2000,
it's very similar.
2011.
Yeah.
Dark Tan Chicken sounds like the cool name of a metal band.
Yeah, exactly. That would be great. Right after that, it would have been 2013. After Mill Village Raid came out, they released. This is the only one we have of this iteration, but it was the 2013 castle. It kind of was trying to follow in the footsteps of the last wave, but they kind of kiddified it a little bit. The box art is a little more kiddie. They went back to the castle term, not kingdoms. And it only had one wave, and it wasn't as popular as the previous ones.
It did have a cool dragon in it, though.
The dragon was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the red. Here it is. Actually, we got this red dragon, and they had these style dragons in the Crowny Knights as well, but they didn't have them in the Kingdom sets. So, which is interesting.
It skipped.
Yeah, they skipped the Kingdom sets. The Kingdom sets were trying to be more realistic, and not have dragons. The bad guys were just humans. But this one got a little bit more into they had a wizard again in this one, so it's they were getting a little bit more to the Crown Knights style.
In the story, in the lore, were these new Dragon Knights with this new sigil, were they related to the older ones?
It could
at
be
all?
inferred from that because you have the previous wave to this one, the green Dragon Knights, the green and yellow, and then these guys were the red and black. They're kind of going for that bad color scheme again, the bad guys. So they could be kind of descendants of the old Dragon Knights if you wanted to. Unfortunately, they didn't get into this backstory. These weren't as revered as some of the classic sets, so they just didn't get as much attention on that front.
Okay.
But they just weren't quite. They were a step down in popularity from what had been happening the past decade.
Now, you said your least favorite was the Kingdoms 2? Or was it...
Yeah, Kingdoms 1 and 2 just weren't the strongest sets for me. One of the main reasons for that is all the large castles feature a large raised base plate, and those are cool, but it means you're not getting as many Lego pieces. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a filler piece.
And you're paying more, probably.
You're paying a little more, so you're paying $100, but you're getting less pieces. It looks bigger, but it's a base plate you can't really take apart and do stuff with. So.
And it is, the playability of it's not great. Because
No.
they've got little pockets inside the base plates, but you can't reach in there.
No, not very easily, no.
Yeah.
And you're forced to make that either a dungeon or nothing.
The foundation for a tower, yeah. So they were all right, and it's funny because the most popular, the coolest castle set that you can think of has a raised base plate, but there's so much on top of that raised base plate that makes it cool. Just having raised base plate and then like 2 towers on it isn't as cool as like a Black Falcon's Fortress that opens up or a guarded inn or stuff like that. So it was a little bit of a step down as far as parts. Lego set design wasn't at its peak in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
it was a bad time for Lego sets.
You mentioned that the designs of all those sets were kind of
Yeah, they were making some unwise decisions, making a few too many new colors, which are cool, and we love them now. And back then they were cool, but they were just too expensive to keep maintaining. So Bionicle and a few other themes helped keep Lego afloat during that time, but at the same time, it was Lego was trying to figure out what was going on.
Some of like the sand purple colors.
The Mars Life on Mars sets had some wild
sand
colors.
Blue. Yeah, which we haven't seen again. I don't think.
Yeah.
Which they probably
a little bit.
They got rid of them, and when they scaled back,
sand red, sand purple are just gone. Yeah, so it's it was like a teenage years for Lego. They were going through a rough period. So that kind of is reflected in the set design. It's just not quite as good. I like the Kingdoms ones better. And I like the classic ones better because they have more pieces, better figures. That's just not necessarily, but it's like, they have their high points, but that's not the best overall. So.
The King's Carriage there, is that from the castle?
This is from Kingdoms. So this is
Kingdoms,
2011, 2012. But so this is
these horses were pretty unique to the set.
They made their own horse head armor.
Yeah.
Is this the only time it appeared in gold? Because I noticed there was another one that had.
I think they had one other horse in gold on the King's Castle. Had a gold-headed horse and gold horse armor. So
I love the metaphor. Is the late '90s, early 2000s was Lego's teenage years because they're like, whatever, Dad, I'm gonna do my own thing.
Exactly.
And they got in trouble.
Went bankrupt. They almost went bankrupt.
And then they got more business-like. They grew a decent mustache and got a job and decided that we need to watch our numbers.
Exactly. So they did a lot better in the later 2000s compared to the early 2000s in most sense.
That was when they hired an outside CEO to come in and
they really did.
And as far as I know, he still works there, right? And
I think he's still involved. I'm not sure to what extent. I haven't kept up with it.
He moved from the Lego Group over to the parent company.
The theme parks and stuff.
The board of directors.
if I'm remembering correctly, he was the also first non-family member to run the company.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they actually hired him not to be the CEO. If I'm remembering the story correctly, they hired him as a consultant, outside consultant, and said, "Hey, what's wrong? Why are we failing no matter what we do?" And he looked at all the numbers and he basically presented them.
You have to cut down.
You have to cut down. You're doing too many things. Blah 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 blah. I wouldn't know who would want this job to run this company. They're like, well, do you want it? And he turned the company around, and it really helped them. And he ushered in, I would say, this second golden age that Lego is in right now.
Lego's in the hottest toy of the world right now. So,
yeah. Now we did skip a complete faction.
Oh no.
Fright Nights, right?
Oh, yes.
Unless we talked about it and I missed it.
They would have been between the Bull and Leo, and they would have been between the Black and Dragon Knights. So
I actually like the Fright Nights a lot because they're just so unique. They, the bat is their symbol.
Late 90s they would have been.
Yeah, they had a witch that was
Willow the
popular.
Witch. And Basil the Bat Lord.
And you got, Basil the Bat Lord. They named
they weren't vampires, right?
No,
they
not
were just
true vampires, but they definitely probably knew some vampires because they looked like that kind of vibe.
What was the story with them? Was there a story?
They were just pure evil.
They were the Fright Nights.
They had like skeletons hanging from their castle and stuff. They were the baddest bad guys ever. So they were a little in between niche thing between the classic era and the Knights Kingdom 2.
Okay. So these are late 90s.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
We also neglected to talk about a very important character. Majesto.
So
Modesto. Yep.
There's his.
He's got a little wand. He was pretty powerful. People were afraid of him back then. So.
What era?
That would have been early 90s, mid 90s.
Around the Black Knights. And
Black and Dragon Knights.
Got the figures there.
Who did he work for?
It was actually I remember reading a poster and it was kind of like is he gonna destroy or is he gonna be a team player? And I was like, what is he gonna do? They're really making him a mysterious character, so he could have been whatever they want him to be. But all I know is he was a powerful enough wizard to make a real impact. So.
And this is 1994.
Yep.
And he's got his own workshop and his own tower, and I think he also had like a hot air balloon.
Yeah,
and it was pulled by dragons or something like that. It was an aerial chariot.
Yeah.
And what's really cool about this box is the box is also a playset. See, it's got a castle on the back, and then it's a perforated castle.
So you open the
and
doors.
you can open the doors and windows. There's a picture of it next to the build. So you use the box as part of your build, which... Not sure we've seen that too often.
That symbol is his symbol.
Sort of. I think I'm not sure if I think he's associated with it, but I'm not sure if he was in charge of the Dragon Knights, basically. He was one of the top players in the Dragon Knight.
Because that other Dragon Castle that we
Black
looked at
Knights.
earlier came with him as well.
Yes. So I think that must be part of his group.
His crew. That's the crew he rolls with.
Exactly, his groupies. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Chris. He was probably the first Lego wizard, too. So.
And his name was what?
Majesto.
Majesto.
Yeah, and several sets had his name in there.
That's how it's spelled there. Majisto. Yes.
And it's his magical workshop, not somebody else's. It's,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
It's pretty
He
interesting.
had his own workshop, he had his own tower, his own hot air balloon. He just had everything.
That's interesting that they had this wizard character as a neutral character, probably good, but neutral. And
He
then
worked for a team, probably, but yeah.
after that, all the wizard magical characters were
bad.
evil.
Yeah, they were all bad. Like most of the other wizards, there's a green wizard in the Dragon Kingdom's Knights. There's a black and red wizard from the Crowny Knights.
And you said these guys had
They had a witch.
They had a witch.
And
Yeah.
she was pretty.
What was her name?
They were
She
the
had a
Willa
name.
the Witch.
Willa.
They were thought to be pretty bad too, just based on their outfits alone. They were probably bad guys and skeletons hanging up and stuff. So yeah,
Definitely based on Vlad.
yeah, oh yeah,
Probably,
definitely
with the skeletons
vampire
hanging up,
style
yeah.
guys. Yeah. So, and then in between that, you had probably a contemporary of the kingdoms and the latest castle wave. You had some feminine Disney products. We're gonna put this in really quick because of Angie.
Yeah,
And,
there you go, Angie.
There you go. They're here. They had some very simple techniques of using a lot of panels. They're more based off of the movies. You also had the Disney Castle, which we pointed out earlier.
You had a lot of castles. You had Arendelle,
Yeah.
you had Elsa's castle,
Yeah.
you've got the Little Mermaid's castle. I'm sure there's
Every Disney
plenty
princess
more.
has a
Yeah.
castle at some point, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's where princesses live.
Exactly. Except for Moana, probably. So,
But Tiana doesn't have a castle. She lives in New Orleans.
Not yet. The story's not over.
That's right.
Either.
She did marry a prince, so
Yeah.
he took her back to
Yeah.
probably a
his
castle, yeah.
Yeah.
Because princes live in castles too.
And then castle kingdoms, they were laid to rest.
Yeah.
They popped up as Disney or specific movies. We have Lord of the Rings.
Oh
Yep.
no, Nexo Knights.
We're not talking about next tonight.
How dare you
They
say
have been edited from this broadcast.
Yes, exactly.
Cut them all
Cut.
out.
Take that.
So and Lord of the Rings and the Disney princesses, some of them overlapped with the end of
Yeah.
the castle era.
They came
But for
afterwards too, but yeah.
and afterwards, but pretty much we had, unless it was appeared in a licensed thing,
Or
we
a
didn't get
CMF figure.
or a CMF
Yeah.
figure. The castle disappeared
For like
a
8
while.
years.
And
Yeah.
I actually love when the CMF introduces a new faction, like the bear guy. He had that rubber mace.
Yeah, exactly. The
On
rubber
top.
tip mace is pretty cool.
Hey,
What are we doing?
this just in.
Oh, get out
Oh,
of
it's
here.
Kickleass
Look at
Castle.
that.
That's the one we were talking about earlier. That wasn't necessarily the best, but has some cool named characters.
Where in the book the flag is in pristine condition in the book.
Oh,
in the book?
nice.
In your hand. There's a page that's got a piece of paper.
There's a big
sticking out
banner,
of
I
it.
think.
Yeah, it's a big banner. It's in there, and it's
That
really
was a cool
nice.
piece.
And the extra large base plate.
Yeah, that one's complete. This just in.
There it is.
Oh, wow. Look at the size of that flag.
You could use that as a sail on a ship too.
That was more like a banner inside the castle.
It's
right?
behind the gate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we can intersperse this between us talking about kids.
Yes. So
Doesn't have the box.
she
but
she literally just laid this in front of us. Someone traded
Oh,
this
and this
in.
had the, what was her name again?
Gale Storm,
Gale
yeah.
Storm.
in King Leo's
Is the
his
figure
castle.
there?
She probably
We
is.
show the camera how cool that figure is.
That's the first
She
female
is
knight there.
attacking the catapult right there.
I think that's her with the black helmet.
She really was a cool figure.
Yeah.
I mean, she's got some
You can show her to
really
the
unique
camera there.
parts. Her torso was pretty unique.
On the bottom
and
corner there,
then
She was the first and only
For a while,
For a long
you have
while.
the
Until now.
latest set. There's some
until now.
until now.
Her face there was pretty cool too.
Yeah.
And this included one of the Technic cannons.
Shooters, yep. That was a little more play action. You got a skeleton hanging from the walls to some unfortunate captive.
Who was Gale Storm again? Somebody's
That
daughter?
was King Leo's daughter.
So
She
she's
was
a princess.
Yeah.
Okay, great. A
Warrior princess, yeah.
Warrior princess. Very
If
cool.
we're talking about Nexo Knights,
Yeah.
Macy was also
Kinda based
a
on that
knight,
character.
And yeah, she
But we're
was a-
not, so.
We're not. Yeah, we're not. Definitely not talking about that.
Nexo Knights has been expunged.
Yeah.
And then we come to the modern era.
Exactly.
And yes, we have it. Mark has just finished building this morning,
This
right?
morning, literally this morning.
the
Here's the
new
wagon.
Lego Ideas
Here's the box.
medieval Blacksmith.
Yeah, you can see it in the picture.
Oh, that's just a remake of those other two blacksmith
Exactly.
shops we were.
There
sure.
was
We were
an
looking
actual
at there.
blue-roofed, a larger blue-roofed blacksmith shop.
I have that one at
Actually,
home.
wasn't that designed by Daniel Siskins, who owns Brickmania?
Yep, he designed all the tanks later on.
Yeah.
Much to the chagrin of Lego, I'm sure. But so
Here, we'll give you money for designing the original blacksmith shop, and then you can use that money to make tanks.
exactly.
that
Yeah.
we don't want you to make.
But yeah, there's that blacksmith shop we're referring to there, and there's the Kingdom's blacksmith shop, which we showed earlier, right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the old blacksmith shop, which we also showed earlier, right there. We were talking about how his hood and cape were unique, but that's the latest blacksmith shop. It has that blue roof. Very nice build. I spent a couple days.
You know what's real
looking at
nice about this roof is it gives us more Nexonite shields.
Yeah, I was talking about that all during building this. I'm like, I can't believe they.
Do you like that?
I love the Nexonite shield.
You
piece.
like that piece then?
I love the
All right.
piece, but I'm just not a fan of Nexonites and whatever it tried to accomplish. So.
Whatever it tried to accomplish.
Exactly.
This
no.
is a fully modular. It's exactly what we asked for in our
video a while
video
ago.
about modular buildings. This is a fully modular, comes apart in every level,
Yeah, we can
fully
show you guys
enclosed.
if you
All
want.
right, I'll let you
The
do it.
roof just pops off here. Let's see, there we go. This one's a little bit more embedded than the other one, I think. Maybe the back will come off easier. That's just one piece.
Okay.
There you go. There's the roof loft area. You got a bear rug on the floor. You've got a cool bed in there with using teal pieces. It's just really nice. And then the next floor down is probably my favorite, the kitchen area. You got all these little food items. You got these beautiful brick-built chairs. You got a cool fireplace, and it's another great space for Lego minifigures to hang out in.
They used axes for the backs of the chairs.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good design.
They're a little oversized, but
Yeah, exactly. They're a little
It's
oversized,
fine.
but they're cool nonetheless. The exterior also looks great. I love these new rounded tile pieces. Just a fabulous use of that piece. I think is what it's like probably designed to do.
what does this represent in real life? Was that a mortar or
It's wattle and
Plaster?
daub is what they would call it, and so it's basically the medieval equivalent to drywall and framing. So it would be they put wooden framing and then they would weave sticks, mud, and like a form of concrete to keep the walls sealed and
then it
insulated.
would, and then it would
so-
fall off, and you'd see the exposed bricks.
Yeah, so if it got scratched off,
Yeah.
it got weathered, you would see kind of exposed, and that. So they're using bricks to represent that, but it would have been more like a wooden woven texture for the
Okay.
wall. But it conveys the same impression.
So this isn't a newly built blacksmith shop. This
Yeah.
is one that's been around for a while.
In theory, they made it look very
Yeah.
weathered. You have missing roof panels. You have moss on the top of the
Oh,
roof.
cool.
So it looks very weathered. I think that's a little inaccurate because if they lived here, they would have kept it up. They would have put a new roof on every few
Especially
years.
if you're a blacksmith.
Yeah.
Right?
You don't want the roof leaking and getting in your metal. And
You're
so,
probably a very handy guy.
yeah, exactly. So
he's
you
too
do-
busy making swords for the
Exactly. But yeah, the tree is a really nice design. You got that beautiful curved big slope. You got a little target on there. Got apples.
Who do you suppose this is? I mean,
I think she's like a
pretty
forester.
Cool.
I think she's a forester in disguise.
She's really cool.
Oh, okay. I was thinking either daughter or wife.
I think
who's into archery.
Yep.
I think it's his daughter, and she's really into archery. You could tell because I think there's a target back
Yeah.
there. So that's her tree that she shoots her bow at.
Yeah.
This, I was discussing this with Mark because I have this set too. I'm not finished building it. But this tree is so complex. I felt like the designer was just showing off.
Yep.
It's really cool. It has a cool design, but it uses all sorts of weird plate and bar connections
Grass stalks.
to get stuck in the ground. It uses actually bar connections. It's not even attached with studs, and it uses the hollow stud a lot. Stud connections. It's crazy, and just what's underneath to make that is it's not what you think.
It's not as simple as it looks.
It's
no.
not what you think. You think, they just no. They use the I call it the camera piece.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that what that's
the little
called?
security camera piece?
The security camera piece. That's what's in here.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like it, but it is nuts. Nice little well there. I love the tiny, tiny little well. So nice, and the half roof they have there.
Yep. My
Well, I
favorite
guess it's a
part is
full
the
roof.
bellows. So you push on that bellows, and inside that little arch
Oh.
area, it lights up when
That is
you're
cool.
like squeezing the air in to heat
Yeah.
up the fire. That is just so convincingly playful and fun. It's just great. That's probably my favorite detail.
That
of it.
is neat.
He has his garden on the side with some squash and pumpkins.
Mm-hmm.
This
Yeah.
is so cool.
So they did a fantastic job. It's basically a medieval version of a modular building, and it's 360 instead of one-sided. So
Please do more of these.
yes,
We
hopefully
need
they
an
will.
inn.
Yes. Oh yes.
These are the Black Falcons.
The new Black Falcon
Logos.
troopers. Yep.
How close is that shield design to the old one?
It's pretty close. The one thing they've done is make it look even more medieval and less simple than the original one.
Yeah.
So instead of, they actually redid the Falcon's design briefly for a joust set from the Kingdoms line, but it was more modern and futuristic, fanciful. This one is more realistic. It's got just enough little spiky details to it to make it look like a real emblem.
And is
Yeah.
that chromed?
It's actually kind of a metallic silver print. It's not full chrome,
Oh,
but it is
okay.
shiny. And so, and all the weapons and armor shiny. They've got the dark, shiny arms and legs. And so it's a huge upgrade in printing quality compared to the older, and even the just from a few years ago.
And is this a white horse that's been left out in the sun?
That is the first Lego tan horse they've ever
not-
made.
It's actually not. I'm going to correct you there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There's another tan horse.
I found one the other day.
Oh, Friends, yes.
No.
Oh, no.
Right there.
Yeah, the baked on
Yeah.
tan. Yeah, there we go. So,
It's a California horse.
yeah,
They went to the tanning salon.
they went to the
very-
speedy tan. Yeah,
Expensive,
the banana beach
rare
tan.
horse.
Exactly. But that one's pretty fun. I think they went a little overboard on the bridle. It looks a little too draft horsey. It could have just been a generic bridle. We could use it for anything. And now it's kind of purpose built to be a cart horse, which is kind of annoying. But
I can't help and look at this and not see a white horse that's
a
been,
baked horse.
that's
Yeah.
been discolored.
Yeah, left in the sun.
Maybe
yeah.
they should have put some like patches on it or something.
Something.
Some
Yeah,
spots.
it is neat that they're trying to
Yeah.
experiment with more colors. They easily could, but they just haven't until now. So that's a really good sign. And then I really like the use of the Ninjago shoulder plates on this guy. It's from a later Ninjago armor, and then this gal, that armor I think is from the Snoke's guards from the Last Jedi, but in silver instead of red.
And I heard that hairpiece is pretty rare.
The
Hard to
hairpiece,
get.
I think it might be Ninjago. It might be just a different hairpiece. I don't know. Both of these hairpieces look very new and unique to me.
You know what I see here that the designer probably took this into consideration is that Black Falcons is an older theme, and because of that, the knight is older now.
Yeah.
And he's aged and weathered, and they're recruiting just about anybody they can get to be in the Black Falcons,
Yep.
or they're veteran, experienced soldiers,
Yeah.
because it's an older theme.
Yeah, that is a good theory there. I like that theory. Yeah. But pretty fun stuff. So I like the characters. The set's really good. So huge step in the right direction. I wouldn't be surprised if Lego didn't make any more castle sets after this, but hopefully they do because it's so good. It's sold out within the first day.
So this was a Lego Ideas
Yes.
set, and you actually did a Lego Ideas Black Falcons Fortress
Yes.
that got a lot of votes,
Got 4,000 about before it just kind of fizzled out.
and it won an award.
Yes. It got the recognition of the month or whatever for Lego Ideas, but that was with only 50 days left on the thing, so it was too
Yeah.
late to make a difference.
Now, in my opinion, and I thought this from the get-go, it was too big.
It might have been.
was-
This one was actually big too, but they shrunk it down a lot.
That
Yeah.
almost doesn't matter now because they're taking into consideration we're going to shrink it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like let's see if I can show you the first picture. This is the original one, and it's probably well over the 3,000 piece recommendation, and they made it significantly smaller, I think. So
Oh, wow.
yeah. That's the original right
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, so that was my theory, is that you start a little bigger and then they get smaller. But at the same time, I think I could have added more color and stuff to it too. So
They also probably have plans for Black Falcons Fortress.
yeah, they might have just so at some point, I would love
coming,
to have a project go
eventually.
through, but we'll see.
This isn't a full review, but do you want to show us the bottom layer?
Let's go up one more layer really quick before.
So again, it is fully modular, and this is the actual workshop. So he has his anvil outside, but he also has an anvil inside with a hot piece of metal,
That's cool, yeah.
that ingot in a brand new color, right?
Orange, yep, that's pretty new, I think. Yeah.
And he's got some armor on the side, some completed pieces. Maybe they're here to pick some stuff up or drop some stuff off.
They kind of purchase new swords, you know.
Which one is it?
Whatever you
Probably
want.
both. Probably both, actually. But
I love the inclusion of these newer
oh yeah, they're so great looking.
swords that only came in the CMF previously.
Now there's like several, I think 4 or so in this version, so 5 maybe.
Yeah, it comes with a bunch of extra armor pieces, which were really cool. I love it. I love it. He's got his wrought iron over
in
here.
the box, he's got the bars of iron too.
Yes,
in the box,
and a bunch of coal
it's
for his
black, but
furnace.
it's supposed to be iron.
Those windows are new too, right?
Yep, those small square
Yeah.
windows, they're
Tiny.
gorgeous.
Yeah, this guy, I felt like he's a well-to-do guy. To have a house this big, to have these fancy bricks on the bottom, and the what
A porch, a little,
what do you call that design around the?
the archway is really detailed with the bricks.
At this point
Texture.
in time, all castle stuff is old and needs to be repaired.
Yeah, exactly. So
So, yeah, where do you think this takes place in the universe of
I
the
think
storyline?
this is probably in the Crownies era, or in the little bit later in the Kingdoms era, because it's not, there aren't trolls or skeletons roaming about yet. But these guys are clearly old. Like, I like your theory there, Chris. These are older Falcon Knights trying to gain some strength back, recruit, get some weapons.
And
so,
maybe this is all part of the storyline, that it's coming back.
Maybe so. We'll see.
And you had a rant about this thing, not about its design,
No.
but about its mere existence.
Yes. So, interesting fact. They really wouldn't... Now, some of the elements in this scene suggest it's kind of a later medieval stuff, like the really detailed roof. You've got the really
You're talking
large
actual
pillar.
historical.
Yes,
Right,
and in
okay.
historical sense, some of these elements suggest that it's later medieval, especially this big shoulder pad. And that would make sense if there was a wagon in later medieval period. However, early medieval period, roads were terrible. Most of the time they would go on foot or on horseback, and they wouldn't, or like a mule or something like that, they wouldn't take a full cart because it probably would be very difficult to get it all the way there. Secondly, adults, people, especially men, and even more especially knights and nobility, would never ride a cart or a wagon because it suggested you were old and sickly. Because it was an insult, especially if you were a knight, it was like, oh, it's like imagining you own a bunch of sports cars and you have to drive a minivan around all day. You know, it's just like, no way, it's stupid. No. So it kind of bothered me as I was building. I'm like, why are the knights riding on a wagon to go pick up weapons? They'd be riding on their best war horse to show up.
Yeah.
And so I think it might be because they only really wanted to put one horse in the set because it's already probably kind of expensive. It was $150, but I'm thinking for 2,000 pieces, it might have been like they were just cutting it close on the finances. So they said, let's put him on a wagon. Don't have to do 2 horses. That's my theory, but... You know,
Or could go with what he was saying, that they're down and out.
exactly.
They can't
Well,
afford.
he is, This guy looks a little old, and he might be needing a wagon because he can't ride a horse anymore. I don't know, so it's pretty funny.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, for sharing your Lego knowledge of knights and kingdoms and castles, and Chris, too, for sitting here and talking with us and letting us know what you think and what you think about Castle. Predictions for the future. We talked about this a little bit in our themes. You're saying Black Falcons probably is going to return.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
so?
I just, I was looking at a set the other day. It was the Durmström ship from Harry Potter, and it has a Black Falcon's flag shield on the ship. And it keeps popping up ever since it went away. It keeps popping up here and there. And, they've never gotten rid of it. And they will definitely bring it back.
Yeah. Cynical prediction is we won't see another castle set for another 4 or 5 years. Hopeful prediction is they see this is profitable, it's sold out, people want it, they make a few more. But, we'll see.
There is that rumor, we mentioned this before, there is a rumor that there's going to be a creator castle similar to the creator pirate ship.
Creator 3-in-1, yeah.
And the pirate ship came with specific minifigures. There were specific pirate minifigures. So if this one comes with specific castle minifigures, are we going to see Black Falcons? Are we going to see Dragon Knights? Are we going to see some Crownies?
Lion Knights, you never
What do
know.
you think?
Yeah.
One of each?
Fright Nights?
Yeah, Fright Nights, that'd be
It
good.
better be Fright Nights.
Any one of those would be fantastic. So if they're as cool as the Black Falcons standing here, they'll be awesome.
Are you going to order some pieces from Bricks and Pieces?
I'd love to. We'll see.
Too late.
Yeah, I'm sure they're out of stock now, but maybe if they ever get back in stock, I'll
We
buy
were
some.
looking at it on Friday, I think.
They're all
And
gone
They're
already.
all gone.
I woke up, not intentionally, at 2:30 in the morning, thinking, I don't want to miss it, and I got mine at 2:30 in the morning. Placed my order, And, I'm looking at my watch at noon, it's still there. At 2 o'clock, I didn't need to wake up early, but it did sell out
by that evening.
4?
Yeah, by 4 or 5, I think.
5?
I don't even remember the exact time, but yeah.
But if you don't have one, it'll come back. Don't worry.
Pretty sure it'll restock again at least once at some point, so keep an eye out.
They sent me that email, and I don't know if you got this too, I'm sure you did, and I've never seen them do that before, where it said, supplies are limited, you might want to order this soon to avoid disappointment.
Yeah.
I never...
It's like they were
remember
threatening
them.
us. They're like, you better buy this set because you'll be disappointed if you don't.
Even when they knew stuff was limited, I never remember them telling us that. So what do you think's up with that? What's the deal with that?
I think it's a continuation of LEGO's tactic of underproducing certain sets to make them more desirable. But that's just my cynical opinion.
That is a whole
What do
other
you think?
podcast.
I know, that's a whole nother video.
I asked my brother about that because he's big into Transformers. We're going on a tangent here, but that's what this is for. Just us dudes talking. He collects Transformers, and all the podcasts and stuff he listens to, he said these Transformers are disappearing from shelves. They're really hard to get, and it's not a supply and demand thing. Hasbro is producing the same number of Transformers. What's happened is their supply is the same. The demand, because of COVID, because of people being stuck indoors, whatever, has gone way, way up. So they're disappearing. And he thought the same problem might be true for LEGO.
Easily.
It's simply that the demand has exploded and the supply has not kept up.
Yeah, that could easily be it, for sure.
So, but this one, I thought that was weird. This one in particular. They said,
like, better buy it when it comes out.
Do it now, avoid disappointment.
Yeah.
So,
like they need to sell it to you.
Yeah.
Like they need to give you any more push.
We've been desperate for this set for years.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping if they do this again, definitely, I think an inn would be my choice. If they didn't do something fanciful, I would love a new Mysterio.
Majesto.
Majesto. I would love a new version of Majesto's workshop.
Yeah.
I think we kind of get that with Harry Potter. So an inn would be my choice, and I would love a new color horse in that, or the goats reintroduced in a new color.
So nice.
An inn would be my choice. So a large style, modular style. So what about you guys?
Yeah, I agree. I built my own tavern in using a lot of the yellow, Victorian style, Tudor style panels. And that was the first thing I built. I had a castle, and then I had an inn. I built my castle, and I was like, now what? I need an inn for them to stay at.
How are they going to get drunk?
Yeah,
exactly.
What do knights do when they're not fighting?
Yeah,
I would do a watchtower or a hideout, possibly an opening up. Or modular works good too. So somehow a little bit of a slight military flair to it, but not maybe a full-blown castle.
so kind of like a forestman's hideout.
That's what I was going to say.
Or a wolf pack. Some sort of a little bit roguish aspect would be really fun too. They could visit the inn and cause trouble, So.
That would be my second choice if it wasn't an inn. With a large tree and lots of...
They made a treehouse. They could make a castle version of it, and it would look amazing.
Yes, make a forester or something similar to that. But definitely, I love the nature, and I love this. I highly suggest buying this if you're in the market for any medieval thing. And Castle is awesome.
Castle's the best theme.
The best.
The
best. Oh, we should talk about briefly the poll, the 90th anniversary poll. As of the recording of this video, what is happening?
All right, so initially they had a poll for LEGO fans on LEGO ideas. It's like, what's the best option for a 90th anniversary of the LEGO theme? And they divided it all up into themes. I'm like, why don't you just make one? And why do you have to bring this up? And so it's actually caused a bit of division. People, Bionicle fans versus classic space and pirates. And then Castle was divided into like 7, I think, sub-themes. So yeah, not just classic Castle, which is what all these themes fall under, but it was Lion Knights, Black Falcons, Forestmen, Wolf Pack, Black Knights, Dragon Knights. And it's like, so you only get 3 votes per person. You got to select 3 that you liked. And so there are a lot more than 3 Castle selections. So even if you liked Forestmen, but you also like classic space or something else, Castle is getting short voted here. It's like they're spreading the vote out way too much. It's like they rigged the election. I don't want to bring up a bad topic, but
some people have suggested that it was an intentional division of votes
Yeah.
so that Castle wouldn't win, possibly because this was coming out, or possibly because they're planning their own
Castle
thing. But
stuff, but yeah.
other theories simply suggest that
Oversight.
Lego just doesn't know their audience,
Yeah.
and they wanted to include this stuff because hey, people like this, and they kind of, some people claim Lego kind of lives in a bubble sometimes and
Yeah.
doesn't understand
Well, you
the
know,
audience. What do you guys think?
Anho, our Bionicles fan, said the same thing about Bionicle. They don't want Bionicle to win because they don't want to release a new Bionicle set. So he said they were rigging it so Bionicle wouldn't win.
Well, Bionicle had one voting point, so I think it wasn't too rigged for Bionicle. At least they actually had Bionicle on there. If they didn't want Bionicle, they wouldn't even list it.
Yeah.
You know, because Bionicle came out in 2001, these other sets came out in the 80s or earlier. So.
Anho's complaining about Bionicle not winning because they don't want it to win.
But as an update of what happened, I think what Lego did was very good of them.
It was very
because Bionicle
unusual.
overwhelmingly won first place.
Yeah.
And then it was Pirates.
Classic Space, then Pirates.
Classic Space, then Pirates. Even Classic Space was divided a little bit.
Yeah.
Not as much
They
as
had
they
a
could
few
have.
other themes too. They had like 2 or 3 other themes for Classic Space. So it was also sort of weakened, you know, in that sense that it was spread out. So
But like Blacktron, or was Blacktron?
I think there was Blacktron, and I think there was Mtron, and I think that was about it. There might have been Ice Planet or 1 or 2 other ones. So all I know is you could still vote for most of the space ones with your 3 votes versus 7 or 6 or 7 options in Castle.
Okay.
So
So what happened? Bionicle overwhelmingly won first place. Then it was Classic Space.
Then
it was Pirates for number 3. But then what was it? 6, 7, and 8 were all different Castle
yeah,
themes.
Castle was basically everything else after that.
So Lego said, you know what? People love Castle. We're gonna back out of this and redesign this. Moving into round 2, we're going to have 4 now. It's not just 3. We're going to have 4 Castle people. We heard you. We love you guys too. We're going to combine all of them into a castle, which I thought was really awesome of Lego.
It should have been in the first place, but they understood that Castle, if you took all those categories and divided by 3, it was more votes than like Classic Space. It was like pretty close to Bionicle. So if you didn't spread it all out, they would have pushed out Pirates and would have been like close to second. So it means that they were like, oh yeah, so we spread out Castle, we're combining it, and so now they're doing 4. And you can only vote for 1 in the second round, so you can't just vote for 3, you can vote for 1.
And to vote, you have to have a login to Lego.com?
Lego.com
or Lego Ideas?
One of those.
Or is it
Maybe
the same?
both.
Is it the same login for both those websites?
Probably the same.
Okay,
I think so.
I assume. So that's all you need. That's all you need is a login. Okay, and they're not showing the results
I think
like they were
this
last
video
time.
might be posted afterwards. but
Correct. Yeah, by the time this video is posted, it's probably already over. And they're not showing the results like they did the first time.
No.
The first time they showed where everything was, but this time it's a total secret.
Yeah.
And Lego, and they were forthcoming about this. Apparently, Lego has an out. They do have a contingency if something weird wins or something that they just can't produce, like Bionicle. They will not do it.
Or an Osprey, yeah.
One of the, we talked about this in the Bionicle, but one of the problems with Bionicle is unretiring all those old set parts is, I've heard, very expensive.
They have to redesign all the parts for it, and all the masks and everything else. So yeah.
So
meanwhile, all the Castle or Classic Space pieces are pretty much still in production.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of which, this sword, is that Gryffindor's sword, but not colorized?
It's not. It's a different sword.
a different one?
So.
that came in a CMF. It was exclusive to that CMF until this set. Right?
Very
Until
exactly.
this set.
Yeah.
And this set comes with 3 of them or 4 of them.
Yeah, 4.
So it's pretty awesome because it's like a Claymore almost.
Yeah.
Because it's
It
huge.
also has kind of a Viking style handle.
Yes.
So you could do a lot of different groups of Castle guys with that sword.
Okay, so we've been ending this podcast for about 15 minutes now, so let's officially end it. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe if there are more things you want us to talk about. It can be themes, it can be stuff specific to our store. If there's anything you want us to discuss, we have the experts, we have the knowledge, we have the know-how, we have the sets. So tell us what you want to hear. Leave that in the comments, and if you'd like to, go ahead and subscribe for more awesome Lego content, and we will see you later.